Ciao, my name is Umberto Mucci and this is We the ItaliaNews, a weekly podcast about Italy. Today is Thursday, March 30, 2023. Dear friends, oftentimes during the episodes of this podcast I told you about the recovery plan, the European Commission's aid plan that invested several hundred billion to help member states after the pandemic. Italy is the European country that was promised the most funds, more than 200 billion euros, part grant and part loan with very favorable repayment conditions. The plan was negotiated by one Italian government, the third to last, and started with another, the penultimate. Since October, Italy has a new government, another one, so the third since the recovery plan began its negotiation. The recovery plan has 6 monthly steps with targets to be met so that funds can be disbursed as planned and reviewed at the end of the next 6 months until the end of 2026. The plan will have to help Italy become more innovative, sustainable and productive. And of course it requires a tremendous amount of work to meet all the planned details, both from the point of view of time and effectiveness and compliance with laws and the environment. It is not only the government that has to act. A lot of funds are delegated to cities, even the small ones, to provinces and regions. Today there are many problems involving different institutions. I will leave aside the enormous political controversy and fights, as always, and I will neutrally describe what is happening. The Corte dei Conti, the national body that according to the Italian constitution performs preventive control of legitimacy over government's acts, subsequent control over the management of public administrations and economic and financial control, in its semi-annual report on the implementation of the recovery plan, said a few days ago that more than 1,000 of Italy's nearly 8,000 municipalities are unable to complete projects and another more than 2,000 need organizational support. At stake are at least 16.5 billion euros of interventions for this year alone, mainly on the front of strengthening education services from kindergartens to universities in the field of social infrastructure and land protection. These are mainly small municipalities under 10,000 inhabitants, concentrated above all in the south. According to the Corte dei Conti, the 2022 targets have all been met, but the peak in spending will come in 2024 and 2025, and that's where the problem is. Another problem is that to date, only 70% of the 7 billion received from the EU has been forwarded from the central government to local governments. It is the Italian government itself that has admitted that some projects will not be implemented. It will be impossible to do so. It is known even now. Also seriously delayed is the national complementary plan, with resources that do not come from Europe but from the Italian budget, financed with 30.6 billion to finalize some projects that would have been financed in part by the European recovery plan. Italy wants to try to lengthen the deadlines and get more flexibility from Europe, but it is not easy to convince the European Union, which has already granted 2 extensions to monitor progress. Probably the problem is that Italy was not ready to guarantee what we promised in the recovery plan, which was not written by Europe but by Italy, based on general European guidelines. Certainly this is compounded by a relationship with Europe that is politically much more problematic today, very problematic today, than it was a year ago on multiple issues. Another very unpleasant news which is shaking the Italian public opinion comes from France. Let's take a step back. In 1985, France decided to give political asylum to Italian terrorists who had been part of the Brigate Rosse, the communist group that for insane ideological motives had killed and spread terror in the 70s and early 80s in Italy, one of the ugliest periods in our history. A lot of good people were killed by these criminals. This decision led many criminals wanted in Italy by the police to move to France, where they remained free to live without paying the consequences of their crimes. For all these years, the families of the victims of these murderers have seen no respect from France for their rightful demands for justice. A year ago, French President Macron decided to change this decision, and it was hoped that this would finally lead to the extradition of these terrorists to to allow the Italian justice system to try them, considering the overwhelming evidence collected along with the brazen claims and admissions of the terrorists themselves. Instead, it seems that this is not going to happen, because the French Court of Cassation, the ultimate court of justice in that country, overturned the President Macron decision and denied the possibility of extradition of these murderers. There are many of us who are incredulous, disgusted, and in solidarity with the families of the victims of these crimes that should not go unpunished. Voluntary leave and resignation are on the rise in Italy among fathers for childcare needs. The utilization rate of paternity leave has grown in nearly 10 years more than 38 percentage points. In 2021, 155,000 new fathers used a 10-day leave out of a total of 400,000 births. In short, although childcare work remains a predominantly female prerogative in Italy, fathers have begun to reclaim their role in the family and no longer want to give up time spent with their children due to work commitments. If today it is still women who have to give up their careers or even their jobs because commitments at home become an impediment to their professional lives, something is finally moving in the universe of fatherhood. One positive sign comes from the growth, albeit slow and gradual, in the number of dads applying for paternity leave. When it was introduced in 2012, paternity leave provided only 1 mandatory and 2 optional days, while today it guarantees 10 mandatory and 1 optional day to new fathers and is usable between the 2 months before and the 5 months after childbirth. The utilization rate of paternity leave shows an upward trend, rising from 19.23% in 2013 to 48.53% in 2018 and standing at 57.60% in 2021. However, with respect to the take-up of paternity leave, a very recent analysis has highlighted some significant inequalities. Those who take more paternity leave are fathers who work in larger companies with permanent and full-time contracts. Besides, with the same individual and social characteristics, there is then a difference of about 17 percentage points in favor of those who live in the north of the country compared to those who live in the south. This episode 2 ends with some little good news concerning our country. The first is that an 83-year-old Italian man, totally blind for 30 years, recovered his sight from one eye after an extraordinary surgery done for the first time in the world in the hospital of Le Molinette in Turin, Piedmont. It was an auto-transplantation of the entire ocular surface from one of his eyes. The elderly man had first lost sight in his left eye due to irreversible retinal blindness, and then in the last 10 years had gone blind in his right eye due to a rare pathology. The levy from the left eye, unrecoverable from a functional point of view but with a good ocular surface, was transplanted in his right eye, allowing him to see again from the right eye. The first time in the world, once again in Italy, the other countries will learn and follow. The second good news arrives once again from tourism. According to a recently published report, Italy is the leading country in luxury tourism with 25% of global market. And we are growing. The estimated average increase in the years 2020-2024 is plus 26% for domestic luxury tourism revenue and plus 31% for international revenue. The third good news is about Italian research and activities fighting cancer. 10 Italian institutions are among the top 100 in the world in oncology. The Italian excellence is in Milan, Lombardy, where the 2 best Italian hospitals are the European Institute of Oncology, a private hospital, and the National Cancer Institute, a public hospital. They ranked 11th and 13th, respectively, in the World's Best Specialized Hospitals 2023 ranking. The ranking complements the one of the best generalist hospitals in the world. In this ranking, Italy has done quite well. In the world top 100 best generalist hospitals, there are 5 of our facilities and 13 are in the top 250. The best Italian generalist hospital is the Roman Policlinico Gemelli, where yesterday Pope Francis was admitted. Well, it's all for now. It's all for today. My name is Umberto Mucci. This was We the ItaliaNews. I'll see you next Thursday in April. Please stay safe and take care. Ciao from Rome.